Another little video on dropping a cross member from a comma, just learning by my mistakes. The cross member's only held on with 4 bolts. You've got these 4 bolts here, 2 at the front of the vehicle, 2 at the back. They go straight into the chassis rail, but the chassis rail's got a threaded rod all the way through, and the bolts only go like 3/4 of the way up. So that means you've got this gap at the top that fills up with like moisture and grime and muck. So when you come to undo these can be a real git. So if I was you, if you're thinking about taking your cross member off, about a month before, clean these holes out and let them sit in a pool of penetrating fluid. So by the time you actually come to tackle these, you would appreciate what you've done. You've also got the problem of this upper link arm is going to hit the chassis rail, so you can't actually drop the cross member until you've tackled this. And when you read the book on this, it says just to put the rest of fulcrum on the loop provided, which is that thing there. And the way you do that is I've compressed the spring against the ground, and that means this is all loose. So with this being loose, you can undo this bolt. Now bearing in mind that this has got a captive type plate, sits on the front. Reason being, if these nuts come off when you're driving, you can imagine that's going to be really dangerous. So they use this plate, which is great, but of course now you can only undo it from the awkward side, so you've got to undo that big long bolt there from underneath, from behind, but only obviously when there's no pressure in this. And an important thing as well is to remember is you've got these shim plates. Now I'm not sure how many there's supposed to be on every vehicle, but there was 4 on Tilly. Now if you imagine, as I'm moving this in and out, I'm making the top of the wheel move in and out. So the shims have been set for this vehicle so that the wheels sit flat on the floor. So whatever shims you take out, make sure left and right they go back the same. It's important. Once you've got that out, this thing goes across the rests on that there, and that now gives us like loads of clearance for dropping this cross member dead straight down once we undo these bolts. But it's a comma, so nothing's so simple as that. So just to show you, trolley jack's compressing the spring, and this is all loose, so there's nothing there. So it's safe now to drop the trolley jack, and you can see that goes down. And what's actually holding it now, show you, is the shock absorber. So it's held by the top and bottom mount of the shock absorber, and this link arm is actually still loose. You can still move it all freely away. Bearing in mind I've got no brakes, I've taken the hubs and the drums and everything off, and that's enough to take a lot of weight away. So if you are doing it and you're going to service them anyway, get them off where you can, because there's so much weight and they affect the ground clearance as well. So I found that a lot easier. The problem you've got now is if you undo the 4 bolts and drop this down, you're left with a compressed spring. It's about 90% compression, but if you undo that shock now, it's just going to fly out. It's going to be quite dangerous, to be honest, because these are really tough springs. So you think, okay, well that's all right, I still need to compress this spring. If you get the old typical mechanics McPherson strut compressor on one of them, you'll find it doesn't quite go. You end up improvising, and it's quite dangerous, because realistically this sliding part, you only actually got a tiny little bit that can compress a spring. It just don't work. I found it really awkward. So I ended up, because I took all of my front cross member off and put it in a vise to work on a bench, I ended up making this thing as a spring compressor. Now you know why I put a joint in it. But basically that'll go in there, that goes in that hole up the top there. And then as you put the bar through, tighten this bolt up, and that squashes the spring, so you can take the springs and the shocks out. But my advice to you is, rather than get involved in all that faffing around, is quite simply get the jack on the edge, jack it back up, disconnect the top mount of the shock, And now when you lower it while it's still on the vehicle, you can take the shocks and springs out. This lower link arm will end up dropping and being dangly everywhere, but you've solved the problem with a spring without all that rubbish that I had to come up with. It was a much easier way, which in hindsight I would have done, but I didn't know till after. I just thought I could get the old spring compressor on it to take it all apart. And that's it. Good luck.